You doing?
Okay. Can you see me?
No, I can just see your name.
Every time I touch something, I lose everything. I just like.
That's all right. I saw you in Maya's class the other day. You and 4 other people in the temple room. That was a good class.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Technology, you know, takes an air is human, but it takes a computer to really screw things up.
Yeah, I was going. I didn't think I was going to get back on there for a minute.
You just got to keep trying. That's why you are the first one to join my program here, Prabhuji. Haribo. Thank you.
Maybe 100 others have tried, but they can't go figure out this guy.
I don't know. Maybe so. It is kind of complicated. But yeah, I'm glad that somebody, you know, I was going to keep on trying till the end of my life to get somebody. I was thinking about, you know, trying to share this with Uber, you know, some kind of discussion group. But we'll see. Let me see if I can record this now, because this is a, you know, that you're the first one to join the revolution. The revolution will be televised. If anybody can get on, you know. Remember that song by Gil Scott-Heron? The revolution will not be televised. You ever heard that?
I vaguely remember.
Yeah, that's from the late 60s or 70s, early 70s. So I was thinking about talking, you know, you know, like what prompted me. Actually, Adi suggested I do my own podcast because, you know, whenever I start trying to talk about current events or anything that's going on in the world at the Bhakti Center, you know, I get kind of shut down, you know. They don't want to talk about that. And so Adi said, why don't you just start your own, you know? And so, I did. You just have to keep on trying, you know, even if nobody's only one person is on, I'll broadcast it, or I'm not broadcast it, but I'll post the video on, you know, my Coexist Facebook group. So I hope you don't mind if I do that.
No.
Okay. So we're already 10 minutes into this thing, so we got a half an hour here. I just wanted to share with you what I'm thinking about as far as preaching. You know, I was thinking about, like, you know, playing the victim card and saying, oh, woe is me, nobody will listen to me, you know. But I decided not to do that. You know, if Prabhupada used to say during the Mayapur meetings, you know, we should just meet for 3 days and discuss the preaching. So that's what I want to do. I want to discuss how we're going to talk about Krishna consciousness and how Krishna wants us to go forward, you know. Let me see if I can share my screen here. I started making a brochure for driving. Let me show it to you here. Share screen. You know Mark Twain, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I read a little bit.
See that quote there? It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled.
Yeah.
That's a great quote because, you know, 99% of the people in this country have been fooled by lies, you know. So I think Bhumi, the Mother Earth goddess, said, you know, I can bear a lot of heavy things, like mountains, etc., but I can't bear the weight of one liar. And
Yeah.
now everybody's so completely convinced by these lies that they believe whatever they're told, and now there is no such thing as truth anymore in this world. You know, they even call the lies alternative facts. That's what the press secretary for Trump in the last term did. Alternative facts. I mean, you know, it's ridiculous. And so if you're in a society that can't tell truth from fiction, then how are you going to make any decisions? How are you going to communicate with people? How is anything mean anything? It doesn't mean anything anymore. So therefore it's really, really dangerous, I think. And the next book I'm going to read is going to be 1984. And, you know, there was a famous quote in that book that talks about, you know, the authority, they call it the ministry of truth. Of course, everything in Orwell's book is like the opposite. Orwellian means like the opposite of what it is. So the ministry of truth is actually the ministry of lies. He said, they told you not to believe your eyes and ears. That was their prime edict. Believe the dear leader, you know, and don't trust your eyes and ears. That was their most important thing that the government, the Ministry of Truth, had told the citizens. And so they're doing the same thing now. It's like this dystopian fantasy of Orwell 1984 scenario is becoming real in this country. Because, you know, just like it says in Gita, you know, religion is irreligion, irreligion is religion, always striving in the wrong direction. And I was just wondering if you had any input about the truth and how sometimes even devotees don't want to see what's going on. They just want to, you know, kind of like live in their cloistered community and not pay attention to what's going on in the world. I think that's dangerous too, because we're supposed to be the eyes and ears of society. And you know, to convince ordinary citizens about Krishna consciousness is hard enough, but you know, when you add on the top of that, the devotees are even blind to what's going on, as far as what's going, you know, the actual lying that's going on in the name of political expedience or whatever. Then it's very difficult to manage a civilization, because the whole civilization is like Ridananda once said, it's like a boat without a captain or a rudder or sails. You know, what happens to a boat like that? It just ends up on the rocks. You know, it doesn't. The Brahmanas are supposed to be the eyes and ears of the civilization. So, you know, the Brahmanas are trying to open the eyes of the civilization. And so Prabhupada gave this analogy. See on the left-hand side there, he's talking, he says, it's like an owl civilization. The owl will never open its eyes to see the sunlight. So they'll say, however you may say, Mr. Owl, please open your eyes and see the sun. No, there's no sun. I don't see. So this is an owl civilization. And so we have to actually fight against these owls. You know, Prabhupada says that. We have to force open their eyes. And so I just want to start out by, you know, that one verse that everybody starts out, you know, hopefully the whole world and the devotees will also open their eyes. Offer my respectful obeisance unto my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance with the torchlight of knowledge. So do you have anything, any suggestions to add about that kind of concept as far as a brochure goes? I mean, from what you've read?
This brochure here from Mark Twain you're talking about here?
I'm just talking about the concept of opening the eyes of the civilization to Krishna consciousness and trying to convince devotees that we need to interact with also the ordinary people, because there's another verse that says, if you don't, if people are suffering, this is in, I think, the fourth canto, the story of King Vena, where Vena, the Brahmanas saw that the citizens were suffering for want of a king. And so the Brahmanas can't just sit by and not do anything, because if they do, then there will be, then their devotional creeper, then their water of their devotion will leak out like a broken pot. So you can't just sit by and watch people suffer. Krishna doesn't want Brahmanas to do that. He wants them to actually kind of help the suffering people. It's all material, it's all karma, whatever it is. Whatever you want to categorize it as the cause. It's very difficult to find the cause, and you really shouldn't even lay blame on anyone. That's another lesson. But you can't just sit by and watch people suffer and not do anything about it. That's the bottom line of that verse from, I think, the fourth canto. I was wondering if you had any other things to share about that from your own realization.
Well, Narada Muni says to Yudhisthira, first of all, in regards to the lie and the truth. And, he says that to overcome fear, people should discuss the truth. So this takes us back to the initial conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, where Arjuna is living a lie prior to taking shelter of Krishna, because he is under the impression that he is the body and all the extensions of the body, family and so on, kingdom. And Krishna awakens him to the truth early on by discussing the distinction between matter and spirit. So that's our initial point, and then the further elaboration of how to act, that everything has to be measured based on this principle that we are, spirit soul. Otherwise, we fall into the lie.
Into the bodily conception.
Yeah, bodily conception, whether it's...
Yeah, I actually posted that one time as a meme in my Facebook page. It said the biggest lie, the biggest
whether it's
falsity of this material world is that I am this body.
Yeah. And that extrapolates into, family.
Yeah.
Village, society. So when it comes to world issues, nations and politics and all that, then everything has to be measured based on what's being put out there. And of course, it's very difficult, because when it comes to getting our information nowadays, also that's all very questionable, regardless where we get our information from. We have to measure wherever we get our information from we have to measure that vibration based on this, based on the truth. And again, if what I'm hearing, will this foster my conviction that I'm not this body? So
yeah, it's the bodily conception of life is what causes the division. And because I think this is my body, this is my family, that's part of the peace formula, Prabhupada's peace formula, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that this false conception that everything related to this body is mine, and that idea is causing all the wars, pretty much, in society, because it's a false conception. It's not really true. We have an ego, we have a true ego, but the false ego that I'm this body, is my family, my country, my resources, and then when anybody comes in conflict with that, then there's a fight. That is the cause of all violence in the material world. And so if people knew the peace formula, then they would probably be peace in the world. There would be, because then they would understand the difference between spirit and matter and act accordingly. They would make their decisions based on a higher principle. I mean, it's not just enough to think you're not the body, and to know you're not the body, but you have to actually act on the spiritual platform, right?
Yeah, and even knowing that we're not the body, and knowing that we're not the controller and the enjoyer, is not enough. Yeah, how do we put that into practice? Because the conditioned soul is just so covered over by the false ego, which is the the characteristic of the false ego is the one that's doing the controlling, separate control and separate enjoyment. So, so how do we purify the false ego? How do we purify the intellect? How do we purify the mind and the body subsequently? So in this day and age, the recommended process is chanting the holy name. That's the only thing that's going to purify the false ego. Intellectual pursuit alone is not sufficient in purifying the false ego.
Because we're not the mind either.
No.
But the mind is also another trap, and I find myself getting, Bhakti Siddhanta actually wrote a whole book called Vaishnava K. And Raghunath Das Goswami said, "My dear mind, thou art not a Vaishnava." Because, the mind is always going this way and that.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't, and we might want to actually do something for Krishna, but if it's not really in line with Krishna's will, even if we're highly motivated to preach or do our service in a certain way, if it's really not based favorably on Krishna consciousness, then Krishna will be annoyed. It's like I saw this meme about the Mount Everest. There's this picture of Mount Everest. He said the path to the top of this mountain is littered with highly motivated people. So maybe just calm down. Because Krishna doesn't like it when you're just like doing your own thing. Actually, there's a verse on my wall here. It's an interpretation of a verse. It's not exactly the Bhagavatam verse that Ridananda did, but it's from the 11th canto. It says, "A person completely surrendered to the Lord, in whose mind no impressions, desires, or actions arise, is considered to be the best of devotees." So it's just basically doing everything on the impetus of Krishna, and then whatever is favorable towards that interest, you do. And whatever is not favorable, you don't do. And then Krishna will be pleased. And Krishna won't, think, like, this guy is so puffed up. If he thinks he's got a better idea than me, if you think you have a better idea than Krishna, that means you're pretty egotistical, because how can we have a better idea than this entire disciplic succession and all these books that have been written by them? They always have a better idea. So better to, first get the impetus, figure out who we are. We're not the body and we're not the mind. and then submissively hear from pure devotees what we are, and then based on that dynamic relationship with that stream of consciousness from the spiritual world, we can determine what to do in our life. Everybody wants to get a job. I want to get ahead. I want to, I want to get married. I don't want to get married. I want to stay. I want to, make so much money or this or that. I want a beautiful wife. And all these are material desires, but pretty much, even if if you get married, that's a pretty substantial decision. But it seems to me, before you get a career or pick a life partner, it would be a better idea to find out who the hell you are first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to make the wrong choices, So it's like...
Well, it's like, I don't have any quote on this, but you know how we've heard that when the demons, there were wars, the demons existed even on other planets, interplanetary wars during Satya Yuga or whatever. And
Space Force.
Then it progresses to, or degresses to, the war at Kurukshetra. So it's on this planet. But in Kali Yuga, the main battle is really taken within.
We're fighting with our own demons inside of our own souls.
Yeah. So, and I remember also hearing a lecture where Radhanath Swami was speaking about, he was at an airport and there was a woman who accosted him saying, it was challenging him that the people in his position as spiritual leaders weren't doing anything, weren't contributing for the environmental issue.
Yeah.
But he began to elaborate and brought. I'm just paraphrasing everything here, but how he that ultimately the pollution is within the heart, and that's why the pollution is manifested out there. Because we have dirty hearts, then we have a dirty world to live in. We've created this pollution. We've created this pollution out there because of all the pollution within our mind and our heart.
What is that pollution, though? I think that everybody wants to have the science or everything like that ameliorate all our problems of pollution, but unless you get at the root of the disease, for example, this is a consumer society. We're killing the earth because we're making, just like Prahlad Maharaj says, Maya Sukhaya Bharam Udvahato Bimudan. For our society and family and friendship and all these other things, we're making so many plans and we're making all these different material conveniences, so-called, but all this Maya Sukhaya, all these material plans, end up causing more trouble than the so-called material inconveniences themselves.
Exactly.
So it's like, unless you stop, there's this guy, have you ever heard of the Church of Stop Shopping?
No.
His name is Reverend Billy. I'm going to see if I can pull that up here, because this is also, on this subject, it's pretty... the whole idea of it is that we're consuming too much,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to stop our consumption. So if you can do that, if people can lessen their needs, then we can save the earth. Otherwise, with supply and demand,
Yeah.
Who is going to? How are you going to stop people from getting something? Just like drugs, the whole drug war on drugs. You won't be able to stop the war on drugs if there's still a demand for drugs. Just like the president of Mexico, who happened to be a woman, Can you believe it? There's a woman president. That she said, you know, a lot of people are being killed, unfortunately, in our country because of your demand on drugs. And so, you know, you're not going to be able to stop the pollution unless you stop the consumption. Okay,
Yeah.
here it is. Let's watch this.
Welcome, children. I'm Reverend Billy from the Church of Stop Shopping. It is such a distraction here at the end of the world that there's such great sales everywhere, such wonderful discounts. Everywhere you look, a new Apple app, a new drowning Elmo, a new survivalist yoga technique. Sick of it!
The thing is,
It's like the
desire,
worse the disaster, the more valuable it is. We can die.
What's that?
well, we want, let's say, okay, we want to stop the shopping, we stop the consumerism, but rather than, I mean, just to try to stop it in its tracks. Our solution as Krishna consciousness is to dovetail those tendencies. For example, let's say, too much food. Well, it's time to make an offering, so we have like Janmashtami. So we make as many offerings as we can, you know? So
Right.
we dovetail the tendency to consume by
Dovetailing. Can't hear you
giving
anymore.
to Krishna more.
Oh yeah, that's the real meaning of Christmas, you know. Bhaktipat, he said that the real meaning of Christmas is to give to Christ.
Yeah.
So
You know, it's just practical example is, I mean, if a person is preparing a meal, let's say preparing a Christmas meal, a lot of times the person who's doing all the cooking, they're not disturbed by hunger, they're not disturbed by consuming the food. They're so busy, and it takes so much pleasure in preparing and serving the food to their guests that their inclination to eat is not even there, because they're getting a higher taste by service.
yeah,
So if people are learned to live more, and first of all, the food consumption in America today, let's take it for example, food. I mean, a good portion of the country is consuming food that they have no personal connection with.
right.
You know, they haven't grown the food. They haven't prepared the food a lot of times. Maybe they're eating in a restaurant or whatever, or prepared foods that they're taking home. So when there's no personal connection to that food, you know, the satisfaction is not equal as if you grew that food and you prepared it and so on. There's a greater satisfaction. Therefore, there's no need to overconsume.
Yeah, I mean, if you offer it to Krishna too, then Krishna's satisfied. You know, you can't be satisfied even if you like a certain food, like ice cream. We really like ice cream. We have ice cream every night before we go to bed. But even if you really like ice cream, if it's not offered to Krishna, you're simply eating sin. And it will, if you eat a lot of ice cream because you like it, you'll end up getting a stomach ache. Because it's really not satisfying. It doesn't matter how much food you eat, you're not going to be satisfied even by preparing it. It's like a chore to prepare it for yourself. But if you prepare it for Krishna, then it's devotional service. That's why I appreciate what Adi's doing so much. He's trying to engage people in preparing the food and then serving out the food for others. And it's sanctified food.
Actually, to make a big difference in this country, just to encourage people to grow food.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come back to that, you know, probably pretty soon. I mean, we're going to have to, you know, that's what they're saying is like, the economy is probably going to collapse here. There'll be a lot of miniature crises that will happen with in the next 4 years that will cause the economy to fall apart. I mean, it's always already on the verge of falling apart. Just like in 2009 or 8 when the banking system collapsed, and they want to get rid of all those regulations. They want to abolish the FDIC, and so they can make unlimited money. But it's a recipe for disaster. And if there's no regulation, then society is just like the greedy people take over, right? I mean, they just.
So we have power. We have power as individuals, and I think one practical way of exercising this power is through food and sacrifice.
Yeah.
I remember one time sharing with this young man the power of growing food. This was, I was telling him he was going town to town in West Virginia, and tell people, just grow something. Just grow something. Yeah. Whatever it is, no excuses, man. And the guy said, he says, yeah. He says he was in jail. Actually, they put him in solitary confinement, and somehow or other, the room that he was in, there was a crack. It was in the floor. There was some dirt, and he was eating an apple, and he planted the seed, and he was able to make it grow.
Wow.
So here what? And why did he do that?
Because he told him
it's part of our DNA.
Yeah, I mean it's all everything works for the good. It's like Emerson said that. He quoted a 17th century psalmist named George Herbert, I think his name is, and he said, "The herbs cure our flesh because they find their acquaintance there. Everything is related."
Yeah.
And so we are connected with all this food, even though, and we know what the use of certain foods like an apple or potato, but we don't know everything. But the Vedas tell us everything, how we're related, how to use all these amenities, these what Emerson calls commodities. And anybody can appreciate a commodity. Like even the post office, they want to shut that down too. The postman takes a letter from the other side of the world and delivers it right to our doorstep for like 70 cents. So it's like all these commodities are there, but we don't appreciate them because we just take it for granted,
Yeah. I mean, all it takes is a couple of Gandhis, take everything down. That whole system can be taken down and replaced with something, Gandhi and the actual Bhagavad Gita,
the actual he used the Bhagavad Gita for his own political purposes. That's a whole nother story.
But I'm saying in terms of some of the ideas that he had were great ideas. Getting back to grow your own food.
Yeah, make your own clothes. Don't depend on this or that. That's coming. Because I think it'll be out of a necessity. But anyway, I want to thank you for joining. We have less than a minute remaining, just like they say in the hockey games.
Yeah.
It's good that your father kind of passed away early because the Montreal team is really bad this year. The Habs are the have-nots this year. I think they're the bottom of the Atlantic Division. Anyway, thank you for joining, and I hope you can come back whenever you feel inclined, because I'm going to do this every morning. And if after the first 10 minutes, I'm going to sign off, myself if nobody else joins. But it's good that you got me started. That's really, really enlivening to me. So thank you so much.